Okay, thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone. This is our last full-blown session before we go into closing, right? The title of our session is Shoestring IT Strategy to Survive COVID-19. So welcome. And together with me, all right, I have a dear friend, all right, and I think I've introduced myself enough, so I don't think I need to go through another round. All right. So more importantly, I want to welcome Malik. All right. Over to you, Malik. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization that you represent.
Okay, sure. My name is Malik Murad Ali. I've been together with Maidin. Now, Maidin is a retail organization. We're a Malaysian retail. We've been in Malaysia, born in Malaysia for 63 years already, since
Wow.
1957, right? And I've been with Maidin since 2001. When I joined Maidin, we didn't really have an IT system or a department. So I set up the IT department for Maidin. And now 20
Amazing.
years later, I'm still here. Yeah,
Praise
bit of a
God.
long journey, right? But Maidin has grown from a pop and mom store to currently we're the number 4 retailer in Malaysia. You know, number 1 is Giant, and you have your Tesco, and you have all the foreign hypermarkets. And Maidin is the only Malaysian brand at that level today. We call it a tier 1 retailer, right?
Fantastic.
And yeah, I guess that's something to be proud of. My job basically is like besides fixing all the computers, is also to work with IT strategy. And if something does go wrong, you call me to solve. Okay, so that's the long and
Yeah.
short of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Malik. And I know there's a lot more wisdom that's coming from you in the next hour or so. All right. So
Sure.
let's get cracking. So the background, if you want, to this session, right, starts with the fact that there's this pandemic. All right. I think COVID-19 being a threat to our lives has sent a shockwave around the world, right? Although some say it's China, that's where it started. Some say it's Italy. Some say it's wherever, but it doesn't matter where it started. But I believe no country can escape it today,
Mhm.
including even Malaysian companies and so forth are also affected. And therefore, the theme of Work from Home 2020 I thought was really apt, and us covering hybrid IT as a core set of technology and also understanding cybersecurity so that we are equipped to protect ourselves, our technology, our companies, and so forth. Of course, this session, right, the BizIT for short, or Business and IT, as I wanted to know it as. So the story unfolds, if you want, further from the perspective that many companies are surprised by the fact that this pandemic came so quickly. Within a couple of months, it sort of spread around the world. And as a result, many companies are unable to put together a really good plan. But as I talked to you over the last few weeks, I discovered that a Malaysian entity, all right, has such an amazing plan. And with your leadership, I felt that it would be a shame if I didn't invite you into this sharing, all right, and for you to share your word of wisdom on how you handle this strategy to manage and cope with this pandemic, right? And I know for a fact, working with you in the past, even when I was in Microsoft Malaysia, you have always been a very pragmatic uh, leader in IT. All right, I like your minimalistic approach, keeping everything as lean and mean as possible, right? Ensuring the organization always at the forefront of building up the business. So the first question that I wanted to ask really is, can you share how Maidin coped with this crisis, right, at the beginning and so forth? And I'm sure some of the sharing will start to, how to say, bubble down to the details of why you are where you are today. If you can help us with that, that would be so awesome. Thank you, Malik.
Okay. So let us go back to December, January, right? When I think China was really facing the whole COVID situation. At
Mm-hmm.
that point, I guess we also saw a couple of cases in Singapore. We saw a couple of cases coming out of in Malaysia, a few.
Yep.
So I guess by January, February, we were feeling that it will probably hit us, and it will probably hit us hard, right? Because it was
Mm.
going a lot of countries.
Yep.
Korea was we could see that there also.
Yep.
So the first thing we did was as an organization, especially retail organization, we knew that this would impact us if there is such a thing as a lockdown, right? Even there's a case that suddenly an office employee would be sick, we literally would have to, I would say, close down the office. So how do we survive? What are the business functions that's required to still run? Again, being in retail, one of the things that we do have is property, right? So we have different locations. We have a warehouse, we have a store, and whatnot. So we looked at our real estate and we say, hey, you know what? Let's take our HQ where a lot of things happen, because we have centralized IT. So not only IT, a lot of business functions has been centralized. So what we did was we set up another office quite far away. Actually, we set up 2 offices. So we had a team A, team B, team C strategy, right? So at any point in time, even if both teams does go down, one will still run. So the risk has been minimized. Right? We didn't spend any money doing it. That was important. We used the devices that we already had. If we had to move the employee to the other location, we brought the devices along with them, right? Right. I guess we were very lucky. We have a network, and we invested in a good network. So once you have a road, everything else can be connected, right?
Sure.
So that was the first strategy that we did. Now, what happened in March, right? And February, March, that's when the MCO hit us, right? And when the MCO hit us, people had to work from home, right? Again, we were kind of lucky is that in Mydin, we use virtual desktops. 80% of our users are using virtual desktop, right? As long as I can deliver the virtual desktop to them somehow, right, it should be fine, right? It's a secure desktop, it's a lockdown desktop. They can access all the applications that they want, right? All the files that they want, and they can, I would say, copy stuff in and out. So all the virus situation can be managed. The only thing we had to do was to implement 2-factor to make sure it's the right person logging in. Right? Because normally people can only come in within our own network, not outside. Right? So we just have to enable the external access and the 2-factor authentication. And we were able to do it rather quickly with no cost. Right? We use what was available freely. Right?
Fantastic.
Didn't have to go to RSA, didn't have to go and spend a lot of money. So at the end of the day, during the MCO, we literally had about close to 250, 270 people working off-site, doing all operational work, and the business was running. Right?
That's great.
Being in retail, we are one of those few businesses that were allowed to operate.
Yes.
So we had to keep the business running. We have to keep products going. We have to make sure that payment is done to the vendors, and most importantly, our employees get paid on time. Right. So as long as you take care of the couple of fundamentals, we're good to go. Right. So that's what.
Yes. You keep using the word luck. All right. But you know what? From knowing you, I don't think any of that was really luck. Maybe you can say from a timing perspective, you did have an infrastructure and all that in time. All right. You didn't have to build up the infrastructure during the lockdown. So, but all that could not have been done with luck alone. All right. I know there's been some planning, some foresight, understanding the true nature of how IT needs to support the business. And you put all that in place, even maybe as far back as 12 months ago, if not earlier.
Actually, it has been there since 2003, right?
There you go.
When we first started off with coming up with this infrastructure for Mydin, right? The first thing we wanted to make sure is that we could work from anywhere, anytime. So we already built the network along those basic fundamentals, right? So once you have the foundation and you say that, hey, no matter what, if the business requires, we can be in China and do our business, right? Do a transaction. In fact, there was once a project that we had to go live, and we were in New Zealand and we installed a whole point of sale system and everything from New Zealand and got the branch go live. And that was in 2005. So we had to build that infrastructure at that point. I guess now probably my boss would say, okay, the money was worth it. Right? Otherwise, it's only when something really goes bad, people say, okay, luckily we got something there running.
Yes, Yes.
Right? So,
Correct. Yes.
but you're
So,
right. There was some. I guess the fundamental strategy worked this time.
yep.
Luck, yeah, in a sense that some decisions, some right or wrong decisions that was done over time,
Yep.
paid off during this
Yep.
situation. All right.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. No, one of the things that impressed me most when you shared with me about this virus nano spray, all right,
Mm.
and I'm sure IT was integral, especially with someone like you leading IT in making that investment and deciding where to place it and how to maximize it and so forth. All right, can you
Okay.
tell us a little bit about that
To be honest,
decision?
that wasn't an IT decision. It was a
Okay,
business. I wish it was, and it was very successful. But it wasn't an IT decision. It came from a management, right?
okay,
Now, this time you have to go back to the business. You see, what happened was people were afraid to go out. People were
yep,
very nervous when they wanted to go into a store. So there was a
yep,
particular mindset, and
yep,
that we needed to manage or at least reduce
yep,
the risk, right?
yes,
And this nano spray, this tunnel, right, that was
yes.
used to spray a little bit of disinfectant, kind of gave
Yep.
that ease of mind to our customers, right?
Yep.
And at the same time, you also solve the particular problem of disinfecting the trolleys all the time. Right? We
Mm.
had to put a lot
Mm.
of people doing it. Um,
Yep.
when they talked to me about it, I was like, well, I'm not sure, but I was very surprised. Business knew better. They knew the customer wants. Yeah. Although there was some complaints from certain people that it was not as necessary, not as effective, but I guess the mindset, the fact that we are doing something to help,
Yep.
to ease the burden of the tension, I would say, that of shopping. So
Yes.
customers appreciated that. I guess the media appreciated that, and
Yep.
although it wasn't a technological marvel, it was a very simple thing, all right,
Mm.
done by Malaysians, all right.
Praise God.
It was fantastic. People adopted it. We got very good positive press from it. You know, of course,
Excellent.
we did our homework to make sure that it is FDA approved and it
Yep.
doesn't infect the skin and whatnot. So it was a good thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad. I'm actually surprised that IT wasn't part of the decision making, especially with someone like you leading IT. Because
I didn't decide on it, but I was like, that's awesome.
that's great. That's great. Awesome. All right. So moving to the next question that I had, right? You talked about two-factor authentication. When did
Yes.
that come in?
It came in, I would say, okay, we have two factors for a long time. All of our
Mm.
external users that comes in, we do use two factor, but we use a
Yep.
licensed product before.
Yep.
And this licensed product does cost money, right? It's a paid subscription
Sure.
per year, all right? And only
Sure.
select group of people will have it. We
Yep.
needed to scale, and we needed to scale super fast, literally overnight, right? I suddenly
Yep.
had to deploy two-factor to over 300 people.
Yep.
Now, to do it at that scale, again, don't want to spend money,
Mm.
being the stingy person that I am. So we were very lucky. Again, this is I say is lucky. There was Google Authenticator. I think 5 years ago we wouldn't have such a thing, right? But now there's Google Authenticator. It's a free service, right? And when we looked at it, we said, hey, yeah, we can use this. It's good enough. Everybody has a smartphone. 5 years back, maybe not many people would have had it. So we
Well,
could use it.
again, you use the word luck, but you know what? Integrating the Google Authenticator as a two-factor authentication couldn't have been a luck. They need to be a plan, all right, and a way to execute that in a very short time.
Correct. No, there's a combination of factors, right? When I say luck, I mean the fact that if you went through this MCO or this lockdown 10 years ago, the challenges would have been very, very different, right?
Agree?
Video conferencing would be different, communication, running business would be much more tougher. But
Yep.
because we are where we are, in terms from
Yes.
luckily we have Zoom, we have Microsoft Teams, we have
Yep.
Google, we have cloud, so
Yep.
we could adopt our business very quickly, scale,
Yep.
and most importantly, be flexible, and you
Yep.
can look at a lot of software and tools to get your job done, you know.
Yep.
And of course, we have choices. Those days, there's only one, two-factor that you would trust, lah. Otherwise, you
Yes.
don't trust anyone. Today, you have 50 of
Understand.
them. There are probably 100 of them,
Understand.
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think timing was probably right
So, yeah, it
rather
was
than
to our
luck.
benefit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
You
to our
can say,
benefit. Yeah, it was
yeah,
definitely to
the
our benefit.
availability of a what you call a commodity-based solution that you could easily integrate at zero cost if
Correct.
you want.
Correct.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
that was the timely solution that helped you out of the
Yeah,
situation.
I guess that's
Now,
probably the right word, timely.
yeah. So the other thing that we have a whole track on cybersecurity. All right. How is Mydin, all right, able to fend off the cyber threats? Right. You being the third largest hypermarket in Malaysia, all right, and the largest, I'm sure you get your fair share of attacks, whether in the form of business email compromise or denial of service on your DNS service or whatever that scenario is.
Okay.
How do you handle that?
Should I say luck again? Right. Okay, so I guess a couple of things, right? Virtualization, virtual
Yep.
desktops actually reduce a lot of risk for us, right?
Yep.
Because it reduces the attack surface internally, right?
Yep.
From all the USB or the
Yep.
internal threats. So because we use virtual desktop, a managed environment for the users, so we reduce the risk, right?
Yep.
From an external point of view, we also reduce our risk by a lot of our users were only allowed to access our applications internally, right? And we do have methodologies for them to come in from remote, right? We're using certain virtualized products. In our case, we use Citrix Desktop, right?
Yep.
And that allowed us to keep things again simple, secure, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that we are free or are we above cyber threat. We are always there. It's always a worry. So of course we practice good firewall. We have next gen firewalls, antivirus. You'll have all the basic. The fundamentals must always be there, right? You can do your best, but you can never say you're guaranteed free of a cyber attack, right? So I guess So it's always a worry. But so far, again, we have been lucky.
I really like your way of using luck, but I don't buy that word at all when it comes to knowing you and working with you. But let's move on to the next question that I have for you. I'm going to reshare my screen, right? And I think this particular area will rhyme very strongly in the way we need to work, right? I believe the situation with our country is quite intense. All right. I'd like us to think about how we can all come together to help reboot the Malaysian economy. Right. So the first question I have for you is, what do you think of the government's buy local first, buy Malaysian, theme, right? And how you and I can actually make that happen.
Okay. I think first we have to understand the impact of COVID. What really happened to all the businesses in Malaysia? Even the businesses that were allowed to operate, that were allowed to function. Many of us, including Mydin, we suffered a great loss, right?
Right.
Although we were able to sell grocery item or the essential item, we were not allowed to sell apparel. We were not allowed to sell electrical, certain items we were not allowed to sell, right? For us, that is very important, right? But that gives us certain profit. So we have a good, what we call the margin mix when somebody buys a basket from us, right? So that was a major impact. And again, this is also happens is that other customers also. So now, because hotels were closed, they were not buying from us, right? So we lost business. Our tenants were closed. We run about 23 malls here. So I have a lot of thousands of tenants. They were not able to operate, so I wasn't able to collect rental. They were not able to pay to their employees and so on and so forth. So it became a domino effect, right? Now, the best thing everyone can do for their own countries is to spend money in their own country, travel in their own country, right?
Yep.
And not only buy Malaysian products, but if you're a Malaysian, buy Malaysian-made products. But if you can, buy from a Malaysian business, all right? If you want to buy IT or
Yes.
buy service, buy
Yep.
IT from a Malaysian company, buy services from a Malaysian
Yep.
company if you can, all
Yes.
right? And I
Yes.
think this is going to be very important if the country is to survive. It's not
Yes.
about me, it's not about whatnot. It is, you have to put it really internal, right? We
Yes.
have to protect, basically we have to protect our cash flow, right? And we have to
Yes.
bring up everybody together. One person goes up,
Yes.
everybody goes down. There is no value in it.
Yeah.
So everyone
Absolutely. I think.
has to grow
All
together.
right. Exactly. Totally agree with you. We need to cover for each other. Right.
Exactly.
I think that's how it needs to be, and we need to try and keep the money within the country as much as possible. Not that we don't care for our neighbors and so forth, but I think if every one of us in all the countries that's represented in this conference do their part to cover for their own respective countries, I think that will go a long way to help their country
Correct.
come out of COVID, better. Right. I don't think any of us can escape it completely, but it's about doing our part. All right. I think you brought it very aptly. All right. Thank you about that. So, there are other aspects of the country, not so much from a political perspective, like, there's agencies like PCOM, which I believe you're part of, and people like MDEC, right? Can you think of anything that they're doing that can really help propel this buy local first better, if you want, actually nourishes that particular vision?
I guess probably the first thing this government bodies will have to do is kind of say that IT is essential.
Yes.
I think the biggest failure of the whole lockdown that has happened was that IT was deemed as non-essential, and IT was not allowed to operate. Data center, when something goes down, the likes of HP, IBM couldn't send their spare parts to get it repaired, right? And that was a massive problem for, I guess, a lot of CIOs in Malaysia.
Yes.
IT needed to move the gear. This was very different. Normally, you say you need the train, the plane, the car.
Yes.
No, this time you needed IT to run, right?
Fantastic.
24/7 and needed to run at the next level.
Yes.
And the Malaysian bodies, MDEC, PCOM was trying very hard to get the government, the media and all that to say, hey, IT is essential. I guess that message didn't go through them,
Yep.
So I understand a lot of my CIO peers had to work very, very hard at the background to keep the services running, right?
Yes.
With and without support from the government, right? No choice.
Understand.
Right?
Understand.
So I guess that's the first thing, right? We have to make IT recognized as being an essential service. So once you have that,
very good point.
The second most important thing we need to understand is that we need good networks. We need broadband, we need high-speed broadband, and most importantly, we need reliable broadband, reliable internet connection. This is going to protect us not only today, and what has protected us recently, but it's going to protect us for tomorrow.
Yes.
Right? If you have an option of building a $10 billion highway, better build a digital highway. That is going to do better for our country as a business, right? So MDEC should probably work on that. PCOM should really, voice out the industry's requirement. Because it's not only the vendors, but the consumers of IT. All of us businesses, all of us SMEs, we need access to technology to move forward.
Yes, agree. Thank you so much for that. The next question I have is you mentioned about using collaborative tools like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and so forth, right? I know many people say that's digital transformation, but I believe the name digital transformation to Maideen is a lot more than that. Maybe you can share a little bit about what that is and how that helped you cope with the current crisis.
Digital transformation is just a word the vendors have come up with to sell more IT products. That's just basically it. That's digital transformation in reality, right?
Yeah.
But what fundamentally is like, if you look at digital transformation, right? It's basically looking at technology as part of a solution, right? You have our business processes. We need to look at it, and either we transform it digitally, or we transform it somehow to do business better, right?
Yep.
More effective or more efficiently, right?
Mm.
Now, you do not need to spend millions and millions of ringgit to do so. You know?
Yep. Correct.
You can go with more simple stuff. Sometimes having a whiteboard and having a proper diagram there, hey, that's digital transformation in some sense. But
Yeah.
we just created something to make life easier for someone, right?
Yep.
It can be like in retail, we implemented money counting machines, so that
Yep.
the human doesn't need to count.
Yep.
That's a transformation, right? So
Yes.
people used to take an hour plus to go back home. Now they can go back home in 5 minutes.
Yep.
So that kind of thing. For Maiden, we have been transforming, right?
Yep.
I would say, not to say transforming, but we have been adopting IT, right?
Yep.
For a lot of our business processes, for a lot of our requirements, right?
Yeah.
From when we first implemented a centralized purchasing system to
Yep.
centralized finance,
Yep.
and then we moved up to virtualization. And today we are
Yep.
using bots to do certain
Wow.
automation. So I got 4 bots running already, and I'm probably going to have
Amazing.
more bots.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's definitely a topic I want to catch up with you in another sitting.
Sure,
All right.
sure.
The last question leading to the end of this is how would you and what would you advise other Malaysian companies? Right. I suppose there's not many retailers out there, right, that will probably benefit from this. All right. All right. But how about other industries from the implementation of technology that you have gone through, right? The virtual desktops and all that. How would some of the smaller ones, let's say, with maybe 100 or less employees in a company, how would they be able to cope, right, in the next 6 months? If let's say, for example, we continue with some form of lockdown, we don't go back to normal.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess for all businesses, I guess the first thing they'll have to do is there's just throw away all this advertising, and a lot of people are just saying do this, do this, do this. Put that aside. The most important thing for any business today is actually cash flow, right?
Yes.
You need to protect your cash flow like nobody's business, all right?
Yep.
So if you need to solve a problem through a technological mean, right, like going on e-commerce, for example, so that
Yep.
I can not only sell physically, I can sell digitally.
Yep.
Don't go out there and spend ringgit 1 million,
Yep.
Protect your cash flow, go to a marketplace if you can, or use open source software, there are lots of solutions out there that helps us to go out, right?
Yep.
In Maiden, we had to deploy collect from store within a certain period of time. I think we did the whole project in 5 days, right? We used the
Yep.
cheapest software we could find. We made sure it was reasonably secure, right?
Mm.
And it cost me less than 20,000 ringgit to provide that service within 5
Yep.
days, right? And
Yep.
businesses could do lots of sales, right?
Yep.
So go out there, find what works, not what is fancy.
Yep.
I guess protect your cash flow. That would be the first. I'm not going to say it's an advice. It's our first experience, lah. Because we learned that we needed
Yep.
to protect our cash flow. Second thing is, if you're an organization that has a lot of IT services, it's time
Yep.
to go back and look at it, see where the leakages are. So personally, I'm not buying new stuff. I'm actually looking back at what I have, and
Yep.
should I keep it? Should I get rid of it? Can I
Yep.
replace it with something cheaper? Right?
Yep.
Because it's not a 6-month story. This is going to be the next 2 years.
Yep.
We will have to manage our cash flow, right?
Yes.
So we are going back. We're looking back at what we have. So you probably have to look at what's in your shelf, right? And I think third, and probably the most important, is you have to be very patient and resilient as much as possible. Things are probably going to get bad. Things are going to get worse, but it's not the end of the world. We just have to
Agree.
move on, and as my boss will always say, like, we have to keep a stiff upper lip. But
Yep.
just put our head out and just go on.
Yep. One of the things that came to mind when you mentioned open source was, are you thinking of it from the perspective of like Linux being an open source, or you're thinking of it from the application perspective, or even a full-blown solution like an ERP and so forth? What aspect of open source are we
To be honest, I mean, the good thing about the lockdown was I could spend a lot of time reading up on stuff. And I have to say, open source have grown a lot. So much so, even companies like Microsoft and Lenovo and the rest have been adopting it. So they have a paid supported version of it, and they also have a
Yep.
community edition, right? So if you're a small organization, you can go with community free edition and utilize it for commercial purpose. But
Yep.
if you are an enterprise, you require different sort of service, then of course we can pay for the support, right? I'm personally am learning up Linux right now, sudo blah blah blah, right?
Yep.
So that I can deploy for our devices, right? At our stores, because the users at the store, they don't require a full-blown desktop. They just need a basic operating system so that we can deliver a virtual desktop to them.
Yep.
Right. So I am looking into that. We are also looking at some SaaS, which is based on open source solution. All right. So we pay for the hosting and whatnot. And and that tool or the product can actually provide a particular service. An example would be e-learning. We look at Moodle for that.
Okay.
So this is probably the right time to actually say, hey, can I save money by adopting open source? Right. And if you're a business that you can adopt, you have the skills, internal and external skill set that can support it, why not? No harm, right? Otherwise, go for the supported products like Windows and whatnot. It all depends, right? So again, we are very lucky. Today we have choices.
Yes.
So I think that's about. So just look at what we can afford. Do not go out there and spend $1 million. Not worth it.
Correct. I totally agree with you on that thinking, being pragmatic, minimalistic, right?
Keep it simple.
Going for the most cost-effective and ensuring that you're very prudent and managing your cash flow very tightly. I think that is something that all organizations, regardless of size, needs to continue to stay very anal and focused.
Correct.
Right, to survive and hopefully come out of this period, right? Hopefully not
better.
Yeah,
everybody will come out better. If you can survive this, you can come out much better, much stronger.
Agree. So you mentioned about Moodle, right, as a e-learning platform. All right. Based on your findings so far and how potentially Mydin can take on something like that, do you think it's a viable enterprise platform? Something that can scale to the level that you need and has the depth of the solution that you require?
Okay, the good thing about Moodle, for example, is a lot of universities have adopted it. If it's good for a university of 15,000 students, it's good for an organization with 10,000 employees.
Sure.
Right? The only thing is we need to work with the experts, if possible. We need to find the right people. And the good thing is, surprisingly, that product is very popular. There are a lot of partners out there. Sadly, not many in Malaysia, right, that have adopted and selling this service. So they can take an open source solution. They can help you implement it. So that's a good thing. Am I going to be deploying Moodle? I'm not sure yet. I'm still evaluating my options. I'm looking at iSpring. There was another one called Docebo and another one. So I'm also evaluating what would be the best for me, right? And of course, at this time, everybody is also giving good discounts. So take advantage, Lo.
Of course. Very good. I like that thinking. So you mentioned about what they call, sadly, that there are not many local companies that can support you in Moodle, right? I think sometimes in certain technology aspects, there are gaps in terms of local support.
Correct.
Right, versus people who seem to be always more in front, if you want, overseas, right? If there was one advice that you give a local IT company to beef up on, right, what would that be? So that at least this organization or this idea could be seeded to maybe a bunch of companies that are listening into this session, and they can take that away, and potentially after COVID-19, they could proudly say, hey, we came for this session, we learned something from Malik, and now we can offer this as a service.
I would say start supporting community editions of softwares.
Okay.
Yeah. If for example, if you have the Red Hat, for example, I know a lot of local Malaysian partners, they will say, only the enterprise we will support, otherwise we will not support. I guess that mindset has to change, because if you in Malaysia are not going to support, we businesses are going to go to somewhere else to get support. It's as simple as that. You know, so because we do not have the cash flow anymore to buy enterprise software, so we need to be more prudent, right? And this is not across the board. You should probably support both. You know, and you know, I think Malaysian IT professionals will have to start opening up, go away from the traditional products, open up more. You know.
I totally agree with you on that. When you talk about the community edition of Red Hat, I presume you're referring to CentOS?
CentOS, yeah, that's one example.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay. Very good.
The Ubuntu or Ubuntu server, right?
Yep.
So, or MySQL, you know, for example. Yeah, so it's a lot of these products have so mature, they're very, very good. In Europe, they're widely used in commercial environments, but in Malaysia, the scare tactics are always there. You know, you use it, you will die, you get hacked. Not true, right?
Yeah.
So I guess we have to change our mindset to say, hey, businesses want to save money. Let me give them a service that can help them to save money in the long run.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Not to say there's no place for enterprise level software like Microsoft, Oracle. They have a very important role to play. You know, and it's very important that we do not discard it. You know, but work through with them if we can get better licensing agreements, better skill, and they have been very, all of them, I guess they are very cooperative. All of them understand the situation, so that's a good thing.
Yep. Agree. I like what you said about making the most of what you have, right? Because that rhymed exactly with what I shared during the keynote session as well. All right, because I think for the longest time we always said do more with less, but at some point the less is already at the bottom of the barrel. There's no way you can go any further. So you just have to make the most of what you have. So I think whatever technology that you have to really take advantage of its capabilities. So that's what was one of the major pillar, if you want, in terms of a core message in this particular event. And I'm so glad that you rhymed in and you could see the sensibility with that thinking. All right. So when I came up with this idea to do this event with my good friend Clement, when I wanted to do an interview session, you immediately came to my mind, and I'm glad that first choice was the best choice. All right, I'm so glad that you are willing to spend the hour with us. All right, and I think we had some amazing insights and sharing from you. All right, and I think that pretty much takes us to the end. Although we have a little bit of time before we wrap up, but I don't want to hold you back. I'm just wondering, is there any questions that we have that is worth answering? There may be questions from the audience. I'm just thinking. Maybe someone from the MC team can share with us, if you can read out to us any of the questions that's coming in through Teams. Because this is one of those forum kind of session, if you want, that we can really take almost any questions when it comes to being prudent, being careful. That's why we call it the shoestring strategy, right? Literally, you just don't want anything more than just enough, if you want. All right. Okay. So let's give them about a minute or so and see whether they can find anyone online that has questions for us. In the meantime, I'm just thinking, just between you and me, all right? We have talked a lot about many things, right? And one of the things we have talked a lot in the past is health. All right. We've talked about juicing, all right, and so forth, right? Now, even in a time like this, when you say you have to be very careful with money, right? How about health? Is that something that we can go on a shoestring budget when it comes to health, Malik?
To be honest, I'm not too sure, but I guess so. You definitely can, right? With everything, there's always a choice. Like for example, for juicing, it's always good to juice organic if you can. But if you can't afford organic, you can always juice with local products, local vegetables, local, I would say even fruits, right? You can go local, right? And if you can't go to a gym, you can go to a park, you know? If you can't pay, just buy a couple of irons, you know, iron bars and whatnot, right? Which tells me that I probably should work out more, but yeah, right? But yeah, health is important. And I guess with this whole COVID, one of the biggest thing that has come out is that the importance of health. and
Yes.
keeping active while being in the lockdown is very important. I guess a lot of people have picked up new skills, yoga being one of the most popular, I guess. So yeah, I think it's important, and yes, you can be healthy on a shoestring budget. Just don't do what
Fantastic.
I do. That's good.
So thank you so much for that sharing, because we actually had during the lunch and learn section, we actually had SH, our fitness instructor, go through just over 10 minutes of a workout. And, during the rehearsal, many of us were giving feedback. Just looking at you made us feel like we are really healthier, just watching, right, without doing anything. So I think the message there for IT people like us needs to be very clear. Right, sitting there watching someone do the workout ain't going to make us healthier. As much as
Right.
we want to feel so, all right, I think we need to be part of the activity. We need to
Right.
go do something, like you say, walk the park, for example, right? Or walk up and down the streets,
Yeah,
two
really,
blocks,
just do.
you know,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever it is, do that 3 times a week or whatever. At least do something. Get off our computer screen and our phone and all that, and just go outside and enjoy the environment. It's cleaner,
right.
all right? Due to the lockdown, many industries shut down, so it's so much cleaner, right?
Yeah. Oh, I see.
So, from that perspective,
There's a
oh,
question
there
in
is.
the chat.
Okay.
So, so you wanna read out
Yes.
the question?
Yep. Just hold on. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, great, great. There is a question. Fantastic question from the attendee. Agree. Support buying local products. The challenge is how to keep it competitive and ensure quality are there too. So you want to go first, Malik? Give us your thoughts around that. About, I think one is competitiveness. I presume that's very
Mm.
much from competing with overseas and maybe even from a price perspective. And then I guess the second part is probably, do Malaysian products have quality? I think there's a
Sure.
question mark there.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So let me answer the second question first. Does Malaysian products
Sure.
have quality?
Yeah.
In 2011, 2012, right?
Yeah.
Cloud was rather new. The adoption of cloud was rather new, right?
Yep.
And I had a situation where I had to deploy about the plan was to deploy about 300 stores, right, in a very
Yep.
short period of time. Uh,
Yep.
and for a retailer, one of the most important service that we deploy in IT, right, for retail
Yep.
store is the point of sales, right? Um, I've actually ran my whole point of sales on the cloud for all of that stores, right? Without
Okay.
servers, without anything. Everything was
Okay.
coming from cloud. And that
Okay.
was developed by a local Malaysian company in Penang, right?
Wow.
By
Praise
three
the Lord.
kids, just by three young kids out of their, I think it was a Microsoft BizIT project, for startups. And they came out and they approached me and they had a very good product, not mature, but getting there. So we gave them an
Fantastic.
opportunity. The price was very reasonable, and we
Yep.
deployed it over 200 stores. Very happy. I still use them today, right?
Yep.
Although we do not have that business anymore, but I was
Yep.
very impressed, right?
Yep.
And they have done a lot of good work. Now, this is just an example. I'm
Yep.
sure there are those bad eggs, bad apples out there that they take a product and try to sell it for ringgit,
Yep.
overprice their services, you know. I guess
Yep.
they do not know the value,
Yep.
what the customer is willing to pay, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Quality is something you have to evaluate. When you're buying, you have to be competitive because there's a lot of people out there giving you the same service, right?
Yep.
I've had challenges where the local partner charges 3 times more than a foreign expert, right? Uh, just have to tell them off lah. And in most cases, they normally come down to a more reasonable level, and they are normally more competitive,
Yep.
right? So it all depends on who you talk to lah. So
Yep.
not every case is the same. Not every scenario is the
Agree.
same. Yeah.
Agree. Now, you brought up a very good point. I would presume those three kids were like startups out of Penang.
Mm,
All right. Now, I admire that the fact that you were open-hearted enough to give them a chance.
mm,
Because I feel many Malaysians have this desire to have the best product, or in their mind, the best quality product. And sometimes they're not willing to pay that. right? So they bargain like crazy to get the price down and so forth, and they get whatever they
Correct.
eventually get. All right. So I think many Malaysian companies, unfortunately, not willing to give another local Malaysian startup a chance. I feel in many respects, so that one day they become the quality that many multinational companies have. All right. So that's why that buy Malaysian, buy local, I felt to some aspect is possible, like fruits and vegetables. But if you talk about services, it's I feel that many Malaysian companies discriminate against their own
Correct.
from that perspective, not just from a price perspective. They look down on, oh, it's Malaysian, it can't be very good.
Mm. Uh, there is a challenge with Malaysian, I would say, services, because a
Yep.
lot of Malaysian services have not come to a level, maybe
Yep.
from a documentation point of view or process point of view, right?
Yep.
So they have not achieved, I would say, a certain level. Like I think in development they have CMMI or something like that. So they've not
Mm,
achieved a certain level, and a lot of
yep.
Malaysian companies do not take it seriously, you know. So I guess it's important that they do that because your
Yep.
competitors are that good today.
Yes. Yes.
I wouldn't say it's about discrimination; it's about a choice, right? And I guess all of us will probably have to think through, right? If you're
Yes.
gonna, the local companies have to come up. You have to become more professionals
Yep.
because you are competing with other professionals, right?
Yep.
And you know what? You mentioned that a lot of CIOs are discriminating against local. I have to
Yep.
disagree because when I talk to my
Okay.
peers, and all of them
Okay.
are like in PCOM, for example, they are very open to it. But the
Okay.
other guy must be good also lah. You know, the
Yes.
problem is the other guy is not that good. The other
Agree.
guy is not that competitive, right? You can't
Agree.
even come into a meeting and communicate in English half the time,
Yes.
right? Maybe
Yes.
you can hack a Linux upside down, but you can't even communicate to me from a business point of view.
Understand.
How am I gonna give you my business, right?
Agree.
Yeah, so
Agree.
it's not about only technical knowledge, it's about communication, and you have to invest in training, you have to invest in certification. Very important. You know, you cannot take those things lightly. And a lot of people, Malaysian companies, those services that are coming or startups, they're not investing in that.
Yep.
And I think they should, and this is where the funds should go to, not just throw it to all the SMEs out there and hope that you get the next startup. No, it's not going to be like that.
How about the other question in terms of competitiveness?
Mm.
You mentioned about some companies are expensive, right? Malaysian companies are expensive. Have you seen because you mentioned about the startup being very affordable? So obviously you've seen the extreme of
Yes.
affordable solutions versus the absurd and yet poor quality,
Okay.
right?
So I guess I can share my experience is that I was looking for facilities management software, and I heard of this two company that provided services. They provided the same
Okay.
software to the government. So I called them in and I wanted to say, hey, Malaysian product, Malaysian company, I would love to see if this helps with my facilities management. But I guess they were very used to
Yep.
selling to our government. So
Yep.
maybe a 1 ringgit item, they sell it for 100 ringgit. So they were selling it at a very different scale. When I look at
Yep.
the product, I could see it wasn't that mature, right?
Yep.
I wouldn't spend that kind of money, you know.
Yep.
So you will have these situations.
Yep.
People overpricing their skill set, overpricing their product, you know.
Yep.
So both sides will have to play a part. You as a CIO or
Yes.
you as the buyer of the service or the product will have to know that what you're willing to pay for, and the other guy needs to
Yep.
understand that what is the customer is going to willing to pay for. A government may
Yep.
pay a very different number. A local Malaysian entity, a local SME is
Yes.
going to pay a very different
Yes.
figure. So he has to
Agree.
price it competitive. We have to buy it at competitive. You know, I
Yep.
think it's free, lah, but you have to buy it at a competitive price.
Yep. Good point. Good point. Thank you so much for sharing. In fact, last Saturday I did a very simple cybersecurity session for families and friends. All right. I came up with two examples. I said, what is your thought about Japanese products? Right. So do you think of them as high quality or do you think of them as average or even poor quality? Right? If I bring back time to right after World War II, and I ask the same question about Japanese products, right? What would the answer be? Okay, I think both you and I know what the answer is. Because Japan had just come out of a devastating war. Their country was in ruins. They're trying to rebuild everything. Even their cars were pathetic. I remember in those days in the 70s, when people bought a Japanese car, we used to have this joke. If you peel beneath the paint, you probably see a Milo what it called picture on it, right? Something along those lines. So we used to make fun of the Japanese made products. Look at where Japanese products are today, right? 20, 30 years later, all right? And today, many of us still think Chinese products are no good.
Oh,
all right?
Chinese products, very good.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, made by
Very
China,
good.
not only in China, made by China.
Yes, you know what what they call the current CEO of Apple said about Chinese products? World class.
Yes, it is.
They can't even find similar capabilities in their own country.
Correct.
All right, and that's why they are making iPhones in China. Correct. Right, that's how impressed these American companies are. So in the same way, I'd like us as Malaysians to think that we are in a journey to continuously improve to the day we become like Japan.
Correct.
And therefore, as Malaysians, we need to buy Malaysians so that we give them a chance and encourage them to go in that direction. And I urge this to all the people in this conference from all the respective countries to do the same for your country. You'll get there one day. I believe there's hope from this COVID-19.
Definitely, definitely.
All right. Can you grace us with a closing remark? And then we close this session.
Closing remark. Okay. I guess we're still coming out of the whole MCO. I know India is going through a massive situation right now. You know, I pray they get better soon.
Yep.
US is getting there also.
Yep.
IT is going to play a very important role. And I guess all of us who are here doing this in that, be it small, be it big, you know, whatever role that we have. We are the ones who are keeping the gear running, you know, somehow, you know, whichever part we play. And I guess I do not know if it's to congratulate you to be in IT or to say what, but you know, we are important, you know. And I guess it's going to be an interesting next 12 months before the more interesting the next 24 months, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So digital transformation is happening literally overnight, right? Yeah. We have to play our part to it. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Thank you so much for your time, Malik. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for accepting this opportunity to share. I personally love the sharing and so forth, and I'm sure all the people who join in the session and hopefully the world is going to see Malaysia rise from wherever it is today. Thank you so much, Malik.
Thank you.
See you again. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.